Welcome to Alligator Preserves, everyone. I'm your host, Laurel McHargue, and today I have, as usual, a very special guest. His name is Peter A. Eschbach, and he is the author of a really unique and unusual book, an illustrated look at traditions of the United States Military Academy, A to Z, by Peter A. Eschbach, USMA, 1978, and hundreds from the Long Gray Line. Peter, welcome to Alligator Preserves.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Beat Navy.
We have to end with that too. And again, for those of you civilians out there, you probably know that Army Navy has a friendly rivalry. Army Air Force, Army any other service of the military. We have friendly fields of friendly strife. We'll put it that way, right?
A good way to put it. Yes.
That is a good way to put it. Peter, A is for Army. First of all, where are you coming from? Tell our listeners where you're coming from.
I am in beautiful Cape May. Not Cape May. God, I wish I was in Cape May. Actually, I'm just up from Cape May. I'm in Mays Landing, New Jersey, South Jersey, just inland from the shore from Atlantic City, about 12 miles.
All right. So you're not that far from West Point then, really.
About 3 hours. So I get up there several times a year.
An easy drive. And I see, for those of you just listening, you'll have to go to YouTube and watch this. I see your diploma behind you, and I'm wearing my USMA, United States Military Academy sweatshirt that I was issued plebe year. So that was what, 44 years ago, something like that, long time ago. Anyway, A is for Army. Peter, tell us, why did you make the decision to go Army, and specifically why West Point? Because you're an artist. Why didn't you go to art school? I know that's several questions.
Well, okay. So my dad was in the Army. He was an infantry officer during the Korean War. He was drafted, and he was actually a concert pianist, and got drafted. So I grew up sort of, and he wasn't a career guy, but I grew up back to the time when the most popular movies were John Wayne and World War II, etc. And so and I was not really a great student in high school, and I really wanted to go to the Army from the beginning. So I enlisted in the Army back in 1971, fresh out of high school. Mom had to sign, and did 3 years enlisted, and I was stationed in Berlin. Back then it was West Berlin. Also worked in East Berlin in the Russian sector as a reconnaissance scout. And my platoon leader was a 1971 Army grad. And one day he said, "Hey, have you ever thought about, West Point?" I was like, "No," frankly. And he ended up, long story short, ended up at prep school, and then got my appointment through the Secretary of the Army.
Wow.
And the rest is history, so to speak. So, class of 78, B3, scrambled to H1, and then branched infantry, which made sense.
All right. Scrambled. So at West Point, typically after your plebe year, your first year, was it after your first year too? They scramble you. They put you into a different company.
No, they've actually tried the scrambling thing a couple different ways, to include not doing it at all. Or I understand there's a couple classes where they scrambled after plebe year. In our case, we scrambled after yearling year, so halfway
Sophomore year.
through,
Okay.
because
Okay.
supposedly they were trying to avoid each of the four regiments having their own reputation. First regiment having a reputation for being really, hardcore, really difficult places for underclassmen. Fourth regiment, on the other hand, being kind of the party side of the house. And they figured if they split everybody and scrambled it, stirred it up, they could eliminate all that. I don't know if it worked or not, frankly, but
Well, plus I think, once you establish the relationship of upperclassmen to plebe, freshmen, you start with that. I mean, a lot of those, the first year, you make mistakes. You can get a reputation that's good or bad, possibly, and maybe to give plebes a fresh start, or yearlings, freshman or sophomore, a fresh start with different eyes, and you're not seen as that mess up, possibly.
Yeah, well, and the other thing too is that you really do get to know more of your classmates.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, as you found over the years, I mean, it's a family. It really is. I've got you know several hundred brothers that you're just closer to than you are probably to some folks in your real family.
Yes.
And I say brothers because it's an all male class. The
Right.
women came in about halfway through, and then in my case, in my company, the first class of women to show up, there weren't enough of them to put in each of the companies. So we didn't have any, but we had no, it wasn't until I was a first senior that we actually had female cadets, in the barracks in our company.
Should I ask how you felt about that?
I was of the mind, and to be honest, I think the majority of the Corps was of the mind that if it was truly equal, if the women were required to do everything that the men did, because you're competing for
Mhm.
these slots,
Yeah.
basically, in
Yeah.
terms of order of merit, promotional opportunities, heck, football seats later on down the road, right? If it was truly equal, then I had no problems, particularly given that they had changed the rules where, and this is prior to, like, for example, women being allowed in the infantry or combat arms. West Point, when I joined, it was all combat arms. That when you graduated, you were going combat arms. Then
Mhm.
at some point, I think about, well, midway, it was under the Carter administration. They changed it so that you could begin going into other things. In fact, my class was the first class where you could go transportation corps, for example.
Which is what I
Okay,
went.
and
Yeah.
that sort of
The
thing.
support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so, again, this is before, as they can now, we've got women in the infantry, women,
Mhm.
in all the combat. In fact, I don't think there's a branch that women are not allowed into
Yeah.
at this point. So I was fine with it as long as it was and continues to be equal. And I served
Yeah.
with a lot of different women in the latter part of my active duty year. And the only thing I would say is that they're, most of them that I served with were smaller, and therefore, when we were jumping out of airplanes, they took longer to come down.
Oh yes, I remember airborne school, the the night jump. Oh boy, that was pretty funny. Um, yeah, I had a classmate who did not believe we women belonged there until I saw him at the 20th reunion, when his daughter was applying to West Point, and then that kind of changed his opinion. It
Mm.
was pretty
Having
interesting.
a daughter will do that to you.
So you're an artist, and your art in here is spectacular, I have to say, and I want to
Thank you.
ask you about it. So, I mean, again, if you're listening to this, you have to go to the YouTube video. I mean, look at this. It looks like a photograph. So I want to ask you, did you use photographs and embellish? How did you what's your process for your artwork? Because it's stunning all through
Well,
here.
yeah, I start off with a sketch. I'll sketch it out, and then I will, from the sketch, uh, you know, basically digitize that. Then I go in and I start filling it in, you know. Um, so yeah, and then I mean, photography comes into play in that you use photography. So, for example, in that one picture that you're showing of inspection,
Uh-huh.
okay, that's in what we call Old South barracks. All right. And so going and getting a look at what old South I needed photographs to as reference.
Yeah.
Same thing. I think it's the mess M is for mess hall.
Mhm.
Okay. And so if you look at the mess hall scene, there's that huge mural at the one end of the one wing. And that so that mural in the background took a lot of time, to get right and or get as close as I could.
What application do you use? Do you use an online application? Uh,
Oh yeah, I'm digitally rendering it in Photoshop.
okay. All right.
Okay, and I could I you know I would I thought about using like Illustrator, but I don't know
Hmm.
how to use Illustrator. So, you know, and then I take that and then I put it into Publisher.
Okay. Uh, Absolutely fabulous artwork. Um, you talked about, so I mean, West Point isn't a place where you would think that someone who's artistic should go. You
You see,
were
I take
uh,
issue with that because
okay, take issue.
okay, only
Yeah.
in fact, some at the particularly at the start, early years of the academy, cadets were actually taught drawing. Robert E. Lee uh, did some fantastic sketches during the Mexican War because he was sent out to locate where the enemy was on a reconnaissance, and he couldn't take pictures of what the road and area looked like. They had to sketch that, and
No iPhones back then.
yeah, exactly, and so the academy actually has quite a tradition, so to speak, of art, um, you know, and it went hand in hand. I mean, we took my I don't know if they do this anymore, but I mean, we actually took drawing. It wasn't like sketching natural, here's a bowl of apples type of thing. It was the, triangle and T square, and but then coming up with the orthogonal various views of a piece of equipment type of thing. And that was all part of basic engineering. I
Mhm.
should point out that we use slide rules. We didn't have computers, so I think computers arrived when you got there, basically.
No, we didn't have computers. We had a handheld calculator,
Ah,
but I remember learning how to use the slide rule. So I started in 79, graduated in 83. But yeah, what we had, I don't know, one of the TI calculators, and that was pretty, we didn't have computers. So yeah, the Corps has, right? All the cadets have it really easy right now, right? So
no
I,
comment.
no comment. Um, you talk about doing spirit stuff during Army Week. I was a spirit rep for Company F3 when I was a plebe, and so I got away with some things, which was kind of fun. But I remember painting things on sheets, right? I mean, what did you do for spirit?
Well, first off, I had joined. We had yeah, they had this way. We had a magazine, a cadet publication called The
The
Pointer,
pointer. Hmm.
and I joined it plebe year and began doing cartoons and sketches and that sort of thing. And so, someone in my company saw that, said, "Hey, would you like to do some spirit posters, et cetera, or spirit whatever's?" And sure, so I began working on those, and then Tony, the guy who ran Tony's Pizza underneath
Yeah.
the First Division, which
Hmm.
of course is not there anymore.
So
But
sad.
Tony's was always a huge supporter of the Corps, and they said, "Hey, if you will, do our spirit posters, i.e., on sheets, like you said, on
Hmm.
big sheets, they could hang out on the First Division. You get you get all the free pizza, whatever you want to drink, etc." I'm like, I'm a plebe, right? So this is golden, you know.
Yes.
Made me very popular. So I began, doing those things, and then also I can't remember when it was like plebe year right after Beast is when they had the competition, so to speak. Not that there was a prize, but I mean to develop the class crest, and I designed the class crest sort of thing. So I have since that beginning always been involved one way or the other. In drawing, sketching, you know, that kind of thing. In fact, I think first year over at H1, so our when we were firsties for Beast Detail, okay, that's when Star Wars came out,
Oh,
okay, and we all went over to see Star Wars, and so I made the Spirit poster. In fact, that's the thing behind me back there is
ah,
based on the original Star Wars poster, sort of thing. So I have just always been, and to me, it's incredibly relaxing. I enjoy it. I have no formal training, something I'm now in retirement going to probably try and rectify. But yeah, so that's kind of how things developed.
Wow. And for those civilians listening, firsties or seniors in Beast Barracks, that's the 6 weeks. I think it's still 6 weeks of the basic training before you start your freshman,
Lasted
your
an
plebe
eternity.
year. It lasted an eternity and it was beastly. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So in in your book, when we're talking about Army, and again, you got information from lots and hundreds of graduates. One of your
Hmm.
classmates, our Jim Steiner, says that Army is the other family you have. And
Hmm.
you mentioned that a little bit when we started. Talk about your relationship with the Army.
Well, it's interesting because I think in A is for Army, 'cause it's alphabetical.
Yeah.
I tried to make the point that there's Army, as in the Army, made up
Yeah.
of soldiers and divisions and all that kind of thing. But then there's Army West Point. And so my relationship with that has been, uh, particularly with my class, something that is pretty awesome, had a real impact on me. One of the things I love, actually yesterday, I was up at a high school in Pensacola, New Jersey, delivering the appointment for a young woman who was going to be in the class of 2028 and leaves in a month to head up there. And just being involved in that. And one of the things that she told me, one of the reasons she was really looking forward to going to West Point is this continuity of over 200 years that you can look back and have something in common with, you know, President Grant, Ulysses S. And he's actually quoted in the book. I got papers from his presidential library where he was talking about West Point. He wrote a letter to his cousin. They didn't call it Beast back then, but about what his experience the first summer was. It wasn't pleasant. And I've always been interested in history. I've always been interested in military history, and it's just the mecca for that in the United States is West Point because it is not, it's just all over you. It's all around you. And in fact, I just told her parents yesterday. I said the interesting thing is that the old library building, which was the library when you and I were there
Mhm.
before Jefferson Hall was built. There's a small door. It wasn't even the main door. It's a side door that went into the newspaper room, and on either side of it is a cannon barrel. And there's cannon barrels all over West Point.
Yeah.
But these two cannon barrels, one cannon fired the first shot of the Civil War, one cannon fired the last shot of the Civil War. And that to me is so historic, but yet and it's just normal up there. I mean, you walk by it, you don't even know it. It's just decoration and it's so
Yeah.
significant. So to me, to be part of that and as a active member of our class still be part of it really really means a lot. And as far as the other part of the army goes, just to be supportive uh, and try and do things to help not only today's soldiers but also veterans and stay active and keep the community here, at least where I am, supportive of that. I get involved in a lot of those sorts of things. I'm sorry, that was a very long-winded
No,
answer
no, no, no.
to
Well, it was a big question too. And again, talking about the history and how far back it goes. Um, the father of the military academy, Sylvanus there, came from my hometown, Braintree,
oh, there you go.
Massachusetts. Yeah. John Quincy Adams,
Well,
all those people.
here's a bit of history as well. So I about 2 weeks ago did one of these appointment presentations and to a young woman from Monmouth County, New Jersey, who will be joining the class of 28. And her grandfather came up, began talking to me, and he was a Navy vet, so we had a little bit of back and
Ah,
forth. And he said, we're related to one of the guys in the Revolutionary War who captured Major Andre. And I thought, say what? And for those of your listeners who don't know the story, they've all heard of Benedict Arnold, and they all know that Benedict Arnold's a traitor, but you probably don't know. So Benedict Arnold was the commander of West Point during the Revolutionary War when it was a fortress, and he got together with the British and sold the plans to West Point basically for, because he thought the United States was not, or the American colonies were not going to win. And he gave the plans to Major Andre, a British officer, who was dressed in civilian clothes and on his way back to get to the British lines, ran into three Revolutionary War militia members of the United States or the colonies who thought something was up, captured him. They found the thing, and Andre was later hanged. Well, apparently, so this young woman who's going to be going up and joining the class of 28 is related to one of the guys who captured Major Andre way back then. I mean, so yeah, the history
Right.
is
Yeah,
remarkable.
it is. And again, for those of you who've never been to West Point, I would highly encourage you to go there. It was a fortress. The Great Chain is there. I mean, the location on the Hudson River was, strategically important. It's an amazing place. And from the first time I set feet on the plane, I could feel the ghosts. I mean, it's overwhelming, the history of the place and how spectacular it really is. But we digress. So back to your book, Illustrated Look at Traditions of the United States Military Academy, A to Z. How long did it take you to create this? Because this is dense. This is filled with not only you're figuring out what to do for each of the ABC all the way through Z, but the artwork that you had to do and the input that you got from so many people. Because again, there's some great little snippets from graduates, their memories from all the different things. How long did this take you? This is a labor of love.
Well, seriously, about almost 30 years. And a labor of love is a good way to put it. But what happened was, so my daughter, we were living in Dallas, Texas at the time, and my daughter was going to be going to Texas A&M. And so when we took her down there for her freshman year, we did, I think, what most parents do when they take their kid to college. And then as you hit every bookstore, gift shop, whatever, and you end up like buying virtually everything that has the school logo on it. And we were in this, and my wife picked up a book, and it was called A is for Aggie. And Texas A&M has a lot of also very unique traditions, and this book explained a lot of those, and it was a lot of a picture book, sort of a, very similar without I'll say similar in the sense that it had a write up and a nice picture. There's an artist down there in College Station that does a lot of really great work. And so Susan said, "Hey, why don't you try this for West Point?" And I'm like, "Okay." And on and off throughout the years until about maybe 3-4 years ago, I got really serious about it and began taking a lot of the pictures and art that I had already done and really began trying to refine it into a certain style so it was consistent. I began writing up, what Beast is, for example, etc. Um, and then I said, it's one thing for me to say what Beast is. It would be really interesting to find out what other people from other classes believe that it is, because I mean, things change. You know that, I mean, the mess hall today is not like being in the mess hall even before my time, but it still is an experience. And so I began reaching out to a lot of people, and I used AOG and Sally Port, which is a great internet source for graduates to try and reach out to people in other classes. For those folks that were not with us, like Grant, obviously, class of 1843, but been gone a while. I reached out to his library, and were able to go through the papers and that sort of thing. Then and I try to get as wide a variety. And if you look at the art, you'll notice that there are men, there are women, there
Mhm.
are people of color,
All races. Yep.
that sort of thing. In fact, I
Mhm.
had a number of women that I talked to, graduates saying, "Oh, you make sure you got women in there, right?" I'm like, absolutely, Um, but there are, you know, astronauts, there are congressmen, there are like the CEO of Johnson, I think is one of the guys, that's in there. And yeah, and most of the people on those pictures are actual people, okay, you're actual graduates, okay. And I did individual portraits on that particular old grad page, and then was able to put them in by layering it in, and got great comments. And I was reaching out to, for example, I was trying to get the commanding general of Fort Moore, which was Fort Benning. And when I talked to the public affairs officer, the it turned out I knew her. She and I had worked together when she was in the Corps of Engineers when I was at this commission that I mentioned. And we were just talking, and I said, "Wow, it would have been." She said she was talking about how they're all involved in getting the post renamed to Fort Moore, and I said, "Wow, it would have been really great, if I could have gotten Hal Moore, General Hal Moore, got comments." And she says, "Well, you might be able to." I'm like, "Well, is that possible?" And they said, "Well, he has two sons that are grads, and one's right here helping us with this whole thing." Anyhow, so I was able to get his son, who I can't remember, he's a 70 something grad,
Mhm.
who gave me a great deal of material from his dad, and he told some great stories about how he was telling his dad after Beast how rough it was, and how his dad just laughed at him and said, "So, like, did you have to go in and warm up the toilet seats for the upper class?" You know, because that is what they had to do back in the 50s,
Oh
sort of
man.
thing. So, yeah, so it has been, it was, personally, I almost find what the old grads say, to be the best part in terms of at least the most fun part of the book. The other thing that I did to kind of maintain that line of tradition was I went back and I began looking at Howitzers, which is the cadet yearbook,
Yeah.
going back to, and I can't remember what it's right turn of the century when that started, right in like 1900 or 1890, something in there, and began finding, as much as I could, the pictures of these different things, mess hall, of inspection, of whatever. And you would see that, wow, that kind of looks like it does now, to kind of tie that all together. Um,
It's
and
remarkable. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so that to me was just a lot of fun. And we had a lot of uh, people were not they weren't slow to show their to share their opinions,
Yeah.
and kind of war stories about. I remember the time that, in fact, I had when I did Beast, the Beast stories. I mean, I've only used probably a third of the Beast. I mean, people just, I had pages and pages and pages, and the book can only be so thick,
Right.
sort of
That
thing.
must have been tough to have to figure out which ones to edit
Well,
out.
and in fact, if I was going to ask you, like, give me a tradition that starts with X, because that's also part of the problem. Is like, what do you do?
What do you do with X? And you
X
did
is X traditions,
extraditions.
because there's
Extraditions.
a lot of stuff that just isn't there anymore. You
Yeah.
remember, uniform flags.
We'll get to that. I want to
Yeah,
get
I'm
to that
sorry.
because
So,
no, I specifically have this page marked because I wanted to
oh,
talk about that. But I wanted to ask you first, do you have a favorite
hmm
letter? Did you have a
um,
favorite letter when you were doing this?
I tell you, my favorite letter from the standpoint of the pictures is L, for Long Gray Line, and
Okay.
that is to show the evolution of the cadet uniform, and the fact that they're marching past, they are passing in review, if you will, um, the current full dress uniform cadets. That's probably my favorite. And that would be followed by the R is for ring.
Ring weekend. The
You
ring.
know, because I
Used
can
to
tell you, like, in the case of our class, got them junior year, cow year is when we got
really?
ours. Yeah,
Huh.
now everybody, it's now first year, senior year, you know. Um, and everybody's got a different story about or attitude about it. But this has only been off my hand twice. In fact, I don't know if you can even get it off, but it came off for Ranger School and it came off for Special Forces School, and that's it, in terms of having it off.
That makes sense. So as an old grad, you're an old grad now. I'm an old grad now. You are still active. And on Facebook, I saw that picture of you presenting the young lady with her appointment letter, which was really kind of exciting. I did a high school career fair day
Hmm.
this past year and had a display, which was really fun. Oh my goodness, to have so many young people, and again, so many people don't even know what the military academies are. You say West Point and they say, huh, where's that? I mean, again, I live in Colorado, so a lot of people don't know where West Point is, but they know where the Air Force Academies here in Colorado Springs. But
Hmm.
just a lot of interest and enthusiasm. It's wonderful to still be involved with, we hope, encouraging young people.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I teach as an adjunct professor up at the Rowan University here in New Jersey,
What do you teach?
and uh, and typically I'll have 25 kids in a class, and these are all Gen Z prime targets for recruiting, right? And yeah, they don't have a clue.
What are you teaching?
I teach a variety of different marketing and communications, advertising, PR, strategic communications programs, things like that.
Excellent. Are you familiar with Magic School?
I'm sorry, with
It's
what?
called Magic School. It's an AI tool for teachers.
No, no.
It's something new. I just heard about. Anyway, okay. So back to back to your ex traditions. When I was reading through that, I saw Pointer Magazine. They no longer do the Pointer Magazine. And again, you talked about doing that. I wrote point counterpoint articles when I was there. I remember doing something about the food, something about the uniforms. I really had fun with that. No more short overcoat. What? What did they
Nope, not
replace the
anymore.
short overcoat with?
A few years ago, and what's funny about that is, do you know how like often the classes ahead of you would leave like their long overcoat, they'd leave some of their uniform pieces to the next class, sort of thing.
Mhm.
Like for example, I had a raincoat that was probably 30 years old. It had been handed down class to class to class. So when short overcoat, there were a couple of classes or cases where some cadets were still wearing them because they had been handed down.
Wow.
But yes, most people have the same reaction, to that.
Yeah, yeah. And the long overcoat, they still have the long overcoats with the
Oh,
capes.
definitely, absolutely. The long
So,
overcoat with
oh
a
my
cape.
goodness. Again, I'm from the Boston area, and when the year that West Point played up in Boston, a bunch of cadets went up and stayed at my house. And it happened to rain or snow or whatever, and the coat, they're all wool, right? And I
Well,
remember coming
smells.
oh coming
Yeah.
back from the game and having all these coats hung down in our basement, and just you open the door and it just smelled like, yeah, a bunch of wet sheep. It's kind of funny. Um, no more slide rules, right? Because now they have, cadets have the world at their fingertips. Crazy. And so a lot of things are lost. What really hurt you to see something that was lost?
Uh, I'm not,
I know that's a hard question, but
I'll tell you but one thing is a little tough as an old grad is, and it's not a tradition that's on that page, but it is Grant Hall. Okay,
okay.
Grant Hall was the place where you would meet your parents. They had a guard there that would sign people in and out. And
Yes.
when you went in the main door, to the left was this sort of coffee donut shop, which was
Yes.
literally
Yes.
only the upper class was allowed in there,
I remember it.
and
Hmm.
and the Grand Hall itself was these huge stuffed leather chairs and
Beautiful,
oh,
comfortable.
it was, yeah, it was classic. Well,
Yeah.
now, Grand Hall is basically a snack bar, kind of the student union. And when I was up there the other day, back in October, I guess it was, and it's also apparently where girl cadets meet their boy cadets before everybody heads off to class. You know, um, and I'm not saying there's excessive PDA,
Public display of affection. Yeah.
but I mean, I remember as a plebe, I could offer my mom my arm, you know,
Yeah.
and ran
That's
the
about
risk of
it.
getting in and ran the risk of being in trouble if she tried to kiss me goodbye,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
Decorum,
right outside,
a sense of decorum, maybe.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because one of the cadets that is no longer, she graduated last year, and she and I were talking about the different changes, and she said, maybe a lot of these are because I'll give you an example. Boots. All right, the boots are brown and are the opposite rough side leather. Right, you don't shine boots
Yeah.
anymore. Okay, and camouflage uniforms, the OCPs and everything, you don't starch those
No.
and
Yeah.
iron them, and she said maybe it's because the army today is not a spit shine army, it's a field army. And that might be why West Point is not maybe as spit shine, it's more focused on, the field and that kind of thing. And I said, I never thought about that, but okay, I'll give you that. Um,
I
but
mean,
it is
yeah.
unusual to see people, you know, boys and girls basically
Mm.
going to class in camis and each holding their Starbucks cup in their hand on the way to class. It's just,
Mm. I don't think I like that. All right, I'm up to Z, and Z is for sleeping. And you
again, a
have
challenge of
what do you
what do you
do?
do it?
What do
Because
you what do
the
you
only
do?
other thing we could come up with was Zulu, as the time.
Yeah, yeah. But you've
But
got
that's
the green girl, and
right,
right, the green girl is
exactly.
the blanket. We still have our green girls. Mike and I are both
Mm.
83 graduates. We still have our green girls. Is that sad? Is that what does that say? It's like having a blankie. What do you have to say about Z and sleeping?
The Z, and that is something that is still very much happening today in the sense that by that I mean uh, everybody I've talked to has said that if nothing else, the need to time manage yourself as a cadet and to figure out when you can grab a couple of Z's, okay, is so important. And that's why, I mean, I remember when we were there, you slept, whenever you could grab some Z's, you absolutely did. The other thing you did, and I'm sure you remember this, is you never really got under the blankets and sheets. You wrapped up, because it would make making your bed too time consuming. You just wrapped up in your green girl, which by the way, prior to green girls, they were called brown boys. All right.
Really?
Yeah, and they were brown. And yeah, I'm
That
not
has
gonna go
some
down that.
interesting implications.
Not going to go down that road, sort of thing. But yeah, so Z is you're sleeping, getting the appropriate rest is so important, and then figuring out when you're going to get that rest is even more important today. The time management is just something when you talk to cadets now. I don't think I ever heard the word time management until whenever, but now it's like a standard. You need it. I mean, I was where I was supposed to be in the uniform I was supposed to be, and I was usually told where to be, and now it's so much more on you, the individual cadet, to get it done.
Okay, do you still have dreams where formation for parade is starting and you can't find your belt buckle, or you you don't have your whole
Or
uniform?
pants. Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
I still have those dreams. Oh my gosh.
I think I think most of us do, at some point.
Kind of scary. Were you a hazer? I don't think you were, because I don't think creatives were
I
hazers.
think it was less being creative and more the fact that I had been a prior enlisted soldier,
Yeah.
and I kind of had seen what real leadership looks like and what effective leadership
Yeah.
looks like, and really wanted to emulate that. I do believe that again, and this is different, from when we were there. But when we were there, West Point was incredibly tough to get into, but very easy to get out of. You know, and today, um, it's incredibly tough to get into. It's also very, very tough to get out of, in the sense that they go out of their way to keep you, to give you the resources that you need to keep from failing, etc. So the hazing today even is, in fact, one of my, I'll say my cadets who's up there right now is from
Mhm.
Latvia, and I met her at Grant Hall back for my 45th reunion, and we are sharing some water at Grant Hall, and she said the only people, cadets, that are allowed to haze you, the only upper class, she's a plebe, and the only upper class that's allowed to haze you is the upper class in your company. The rest of the upper classes are not allowed to like mess with you.
Oh,
Well, I mean, you can get corrected,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
but it's like you're falling out when you're headed over to Grant Hall, right? But as far as hazing, or you know, and even then, the definitions, I'm sure, are a lot different than I'm sure no one is being 100-mile-an-hour taped to the shower wall, in the sinks type of thing. But yeah, and no, I wasn't, with the notable exception of when I was at H1, we felt that there was a tradition of maintaining, the motto, "You check them in, we check them out." Hotel One, and uh, but personally, no. To me, if someone needs correction, or yeah,
You knew how to
I
do
see
it
a need for it.
professionally. Yeah.
And the other thing too is part of West Point is surviving. West Point is surviving. It's not Penn State, it's not
Yeah.
Rutgers. It is, it's
A
supposed to
military
be tough.
academy. Yeah.
It's supposed to be tough. And again, back then, the theory was we're going to break everybody down and
Mhm.
build everybody back up. And if that means reducing you down, physically or by hazing or whatever, it was done. Not so much the case anymore. The fourth class system doesn't really exist as it did back in the 70s and 80s.
Hmm.
But then again, what existed in the 70s and 80s was nowhere near what it was in the 50s and 60s.
Right. Right.
So,
Right. I mean, we all have the expression the core has, right? Like I
but
think every new class thinks that the class behind it has it easier. They just have it different. I guess we have to
it's
believe.
different. But again, it like you say, you can still go up there, and someone going uh, West Point. Actually, Hal Moore said this in a speech. Um, in that is that going up to someone from West Point, from a class 50, almost 100 years ago, went up there today, they would feel very much at home. It would be I mean, yes, there'd be changes, but it'd be very, very familiar, to them. It doesn't really matter whether you're doing computations on a supercomputer or a slide rule, or no, not really. The uniforms are the same. You know, we're still doing the kind of Napoleonic drill on the plane,
Hmm. Hmm.
that sort of thing. And you have that connection, you have that tie going all the way back to 1802.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. So, words of advice for young people out there maybe considering going to USMA, the United States Military Academy at West Point.
I would suggest, and actually, I'm supposed to meet a young man in a week or two to have this very discussion. And I would say, don't wait until junior year to figure out, oh, maybe I want to go. What do I need to do? If you're really interested in going, and you need to start working on it probably freshman year. I have, you are a Malo, and I'm on the field force, and we'll look at kids who have perfect grades, maybe play a sport, and that's it. No community service,
Mhm.
no leadership, no, and they're in their junior year now. It's a little late to try and pull that
Yeah.
full file
Yeah.
together because the competition is so tough
Yeah.
that you might be the best thing since sliced bread, but if your application doesn't, it's going to, how are they going to match you against someone else? So it really does mean, you know, look for leadership opportunities. I mean, the academics are a given. You know,
Mhm.
the just you want to be the best possible dean's list, whatever that you can be in your. You want to take the advanced courses, the AP courses. That really help. If you are a in Boy Scouts, you want to be an Eagle. If you're a Girl Scouts, you want the Gold Award. You want if and we just are running into this right now. You want to go to Boy State or Girls State. That is a great, that discriminator in terms of who's ready to go. But yeah, and what I would do is if I was someone who, as a in junior high, middle school, was potentially interested in going to one of the service academies, I would find the local, and the Navy calls them blue and gold teams. We're called the field force. I don't know what the Air Force does, but I really don't care. But seriously, find out who that is and go have a talk with them and say, what do I need to do? You know, and start working on it. Now to
Right.
start building up your file, so you will be competitive.
Right. I would add contact the director of admissions for any of the military academies you might be interested in and get the application packet. Get it started. You
I
get
would
it
say one
started
more
at any
thing
time.
about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to drag this out, but if you want to go to West Point, really consider what Plan B is.
Yeah.
Is Plan B, should you also apply to Air Force? Should you also apply to the Navy? Um, I mean, unless you're set like on being a ground pounder, then
Mhm.
fine. But by applying to the others, because we do ask, in our interviews, have you applied to the other service academies? Because what we're looking for is a commitment to service of this great country of ours.
Yeah.
And and maybe Plan B is okay. I'm going to be applying to Rutgers, but I've already applied also to their ROTC program. So if I
Mhm.
can't get into West Point and I don't want to go to Navy, okay, then I'm going to go, and I'm going to go ROTC. I still want to serve. That really, believe me, pays dividends as well.
Good advice. Peter Eschbach, author of An Illustrated Look at Traditions of the United States Military Academy A to Z. Is there a book two coming out? Are you working on more? Because I know that you said you had so much input. What do you think? Are you working
Uh,
on anything else?
I'm working on a bunch of different things, but not on a book too. And while I thought about that because of the input that I got for about 2 picoseconds. If this took 30, I mean, I just turned 70, so I don't think I'm going to be, yeah, doing book two. If you look on each page in each of the like B letter
Mhm.
down below, it lists other traditions of the where it's possible. Uh,
Mhm.
so B also there's Camp Buckner, for example, or bayonet assault course, or those
Oh,
sorts of things.
I hated that.
You know,
That was tough.
and and my point being, there's so much that yes, it could have been a much thicker book, but I'd still be working on it. I'm working right now on actually, so my class is kind of be coming up on our 50th anniversary in 28. And so what they used to do, and this was a tradition, but they used to do years and years, like even before the like 1800s, they would have do class memory books. Okay. And so we're not following the standard that they used back in the early 1900s or 1800s, but it's going to be kind of like what you see there, but it's going to be our class stories about our 47 month, journey through West Point. So we start off with again our day. Who remembers RJ? What stories are there about RJ? etc. And so they're sending me in all their stuff, and I'm building that out and modeling it, and trying to do some illustration around that as well. And where are we right now? I can't even remember. I think we're on Buckner, maybe.
You have
We
help
haven't
with
gotten
this
very far.
because
Pardon
again,
me?
that do you have help with that? Because again, you're going to create a book for the class.
I'm sorry. And what was the question?
Will it be a book for the class?
Yeah, exactly. That's the idea, is that it will be ready, published and ready to go for our 50th anniversary in
Wow,
28.
that's huge. That is
And
huge.
on top of that, we're working. I think you're probably familiar with the 50-year affiliation program.
Mm.
They didn't have it when we were cadets, but now the 50-year affiliation program takes the class, like for example, the class that's coming in this summer, which is the class of 28, and pairs it with their 50-year seniors, if you will. In this case, the class of 78. And we are, with them, we try to develop a relationship, bond with them. We're going to be up there. My wife and I are both going to be up there for our day, and the day prior to our day actually happening. We're going to be meeting with them and the AOG and all that. And then on our day, when they and their parents are on I call, and you hear the traditional, you now have 90 seconds to say goodbye to your child. Um, we will be outside waiting to meet the parents. My wife will be handing out tissues, and then ultimately, and throughout their career as cadets at different points, we will have reps there and whatever. But right down to the company level is what we're trying to do. And then at graduation, or actually commissioning, right? They will get their second lieutenant's bars from us. So that's the
Wow.
plan. And I'm kind of very involved in that as well.
That's fabulous. And again, for those civilians out there, our day is the day that the new cadets report for their first day. You get off the bus in your civilian clothes or whatever, and you all of a sudden turn into a soldier. You're put in uniform, and before the day ends, you're marching in a parade, if they still do that.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. That's what we did. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's quite a day. It's quite a transition. Peter, where can people find out more about you and get your book?
Well, the book is available on where you expect, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and directly from the publisher, BookBaby.com. But it has a sort of a weird URL that you wouldn't just right off the top, and I'd be hesitant to say go to, sort of
Okay.
thing.
So you can send something to me and I can put it in the show notes.
I'd be happy to. And like I said, Laurel, I can, for your listeners, watchers, I can certainly, we can do like a $5 off coupon using Laurel as the coupon. And I'll send you the information on how that, either through a link slash
QR
QR
code
code.
or okay. All
Yeah.
right. That would be absolutely
Okay.
fabulous. And while before I say goodbye to you, I would like to also put in a plug. And again, Peter, if you know veterans who have stories to tell, but maybe they're not sure how to tell them, the Virginia War Memorial has a program called the Mighty Pen Project. And best-selling New York Times best-selling author David L. Robbins leads that. It's a free course for veterans to tell stories, and now they have their stories on a podcast. They have the Mighty Pen podcast. I will have links to this as well. Again, it's free for veterans. It's wonderful. David Robbins is an amazing coach, teacher, leader, author, all of that. So I just wanted to put that plug out there as well. Any last words to our listeners, Peter?
Oh, absolutely. Go Army, beat Navy.
Go Army, beat Navy. Peter, thank you for visiting with me today. And listeners and watchers out there, you can find my show notes with links and photos on my website at leadvillelaurel.com. And maybe I'll meet you at West Point someday. I need to get back there and feel the
Yeah, it's
ghosts again.
a little easier for me. I always say we go back up to recharge our rings. You know,
That's that sounds great. Peter, thank you again and have a lovely rest of the week.
thank you very much, Laurel. You too.
Bye. Bye.